So now it was time to have my operation. This was around about the 8th of March. I'd been on a diet for 4 to 5 weeks, and that obviously includes my 2-week pre-op diet as well. And I was really happy with the weight loss. I'd lost 1 stone. I was told that the weight loss on your pre-op diet isn't so much fat weight loss, it's more of a liquid weight loss, but nevertheless it's nice to see the scales go down. So I arrived at the Nuffield first thing on the 8th of March to have my operation, the 8th of April, and I was really looking forward to it. You get into your mind that you're going to have it, so you end up looking forward to it rather than being worried about anything. They were very, very good, very organised. I went down to the theatre more or less on time, so I didn't have to wait any extra. And I walked down to the theatre and lay on the table where they gave me the anaesthetic. The anaesthetist and Mr. Richard Wellborn, the surgeon, came and saw me the morning of my operation before I walked down to the theatre and explained what they were going to do. So when I got down there, I saw the anaesthetist, and he put me at rest straight away because he was a really nice chap. So I had the anaesthetic, and the next thing I knew was it was all over. I woke up and they just basically asked if everything was alright, how are my pain levels. First thing I noticed was I felt like I had wasn't any pain from my stomach area or anything like that, but I felt like I had something stuck at the back of my throat. So I said, oh, something in my throat, and she said, oh, it's just where your intubation tube's gone down, you'll have a bit of a sore throat. So didn't worry about it too much. Then she gave me a bit more paracetamol intravenously because I was in a bit of discomfort, and after recovery I went back down to my room, and basically I just slept. It was the afternoon by that point, and I slept quite a bit on my back, but they keep on waking you up every half an hour or so to check your blood pressure and check your stats. So I didn't get that much sleep, but I was very comfortable. They tried me on liquids later in the evening. I just had some sips of water because my throat was irritating me as well still. And then throughout the night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and started to feel very, very sick. So I called the nurse out, and she gave me some anti-sickness medication, and I felt better straight away. It's amazing when you have medication intravenously how quickly it works, as opposed to taking pills that don't often work for half an hour or so. So it was nice that the sickness went and I went back to sleep again. The next morning I was tried on fluids again, and I had some a bit of jelly as well, a very, very small amount of jelly. But I was constantly worried about this thing in my throat. I still felt like I had something in my throat. It felt quite big at that point. It was not down my throat, but where your larynx is, where your tonsils are. And again, the on-call doctor came out, and he just said, oh, it's just some post-operative common thing with the intubation tube, and I've scratched the back of my throat. It'll get better, they said. And I was discharged around about 11 o'clock that morning. So I was only in the hospital for a night, relatively comfortable apart from this annoying thing in my throat. So I went home, again went to bed, had to rest, and the following night throughout that day actually I still felt this thing in my throat that was really irritating. I could feel it moving around. Every time I moved my head I could feel something flopping around, but I hadn't actually had a look to see what it was yet. And again about 2 o'clock that night, so my first night back at home, again I felt very, very sick, and when I had woken up fully, whatever was in my throat had really enlarged a lot more, and it felt like someone was sticking a finger down my throat. So having that and feeling sick, I just started vomiting. I don't know really what I was vomiting, it was just liquid because I hadn't eaten anything, but the pain was absolutely unbearable. If you can imagine having an operation on your stomach and heaving as well, it was horrendous, and I was having problems breathing as well, because when I did eventually look in the mirror, it was actually my uvula, which is the floppy bit in your throat between your tonsils that kind of like does this. It had enlarged to about the size of a little finger, and it was dropping down the back of my throat. So I was being sick for about 3 hours, I think, on and off. I felt very dehydrated, and I felt really, really, really poorly. Eventually, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I just thought that I'm not feeling any better. I can hardly move my head because this thing in my throat is making me gag all the time. And I went to A&E, and I was admitted into A&E, where I explained about the operation that I'd had, and they actually managed to contact my anaesthetist who did my operation, and it was probably about 7 o'clock in the morning at this point at A&E, and he came and sorted me out. He was really, really, really good. He was very, very genuinely concerned. Obviously it was his area that's why I was getting this issue with my throat. A&E had given me anti-sickness medicine, so I wasn't any longer feeling sick, and they'd also started to rehydrate me with fluids, but this thing in my throat was still making me gag all the time. So the anaesthetist had arranged for me to be admitted back into the Nuffield, and I stayed there for another night. So he arranged for me to go back into Nuffield, and then he met me at the Nuffield, so he'd driven from A&E to the Nuffield, made sure that I was comfortable, and he gave me some, I had about 4 litres of fluid put in over a 24-hour period, I suppose, which is quite a lot. But he then came back and checked me on Sunday night, and then he came back on Monday morning as well, which was, he was lovely. I know it was his area as to why I had this problem in my throat. He suggested it was either it had been damaged via when the intubation tube had gone down, or he said when they pull the tube out they use a sucker like they do in dentists in your mouth, and he thought that maybe the uvula got sucked up and then therefore it swelled up and got bruised and damaged. So I had 24 hours in the Nuffield and felt a lot better the next day. The swelling was still there, but obviously I wasn't feeling the sickness anymore. And yes, as I said, the anaesthetist came back again to check to see if I was alright. And I was okay to be discharged on the following day. The next week or so was pretty boring on the eating front. It was basically just really, really clear fluids, broth, bovril. I had the occasional watered down tomato soup, just some really, really, really thin fluid. And at the end of the first week post-op, I weighed myself and I had lost 6 pounds, which was great. They say that you're supposed to actually put on weight post-op, because obviously you've come off your pre-op diet, but that didn't happen with me. So the end of the first week I'd lost just under 1.5 stone altogether, from the period where I'd left the doctors to a week post-op. So yeah, that I was really, really happy with that weight loss. And I was feeling a lot better as well, which was I suppose a bonus. The wounds, everything was fine with the wounds. They glued them as opposed to stitch them. I felt a little bit of discomfort around where my port is. I have a port wound which is about that long, and then I had, I think it's 5 or 6 very small wounds which are about an inch long. The glue held quite well. There was no oozing or anything from that. I just did feel a little bit. It's almost like a stitch sensation underneath where the port is. But I got that. I was able to have a shower 5 days post-op with that, and it felt a lot better when you could get it wet again. So yeah, there was no problem with the ports. So that's basically my operation journey. I'll talk a bit more about what's gone on for the next 3 weeks after that, and I think it's obviously important to talk about the operation and then a week post-op. Apart from the swelling in my throat, by the way, went down probably about 10 days post-op. I thought it was never going to go down, but it did, and I'm happy now because it feels normal. But it was a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. But as I said, Southwest Bariatric and Nuffield were very, very good at sorting it out. But it's just one of those complications, I guess. It could happen to anyone. So I'm just relaying my experience from that. It wasn't great to do. It wasn't great, but it got sorted. Okay.